Hi everyone, so today I'm going to be reviewing for you Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews. Generally, when I'm reviewing, I like to finish my book and then give myself a whole day to kind of think over what I want to say and write out a very loose outline of a script just so I know where I'm going with it. But in this case, I finished Me and Earl and the Dying Girl right in the middle of finals week, and then the whole first week of break I did nothing but sleep and work, and I did absolutely no booktubing. And I'm really glad that I took my time to make this review because my thoughts on the book have changed considerably since then. Initially, I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, but I have knocked it down to 3 out of 5 stars. So this story is about a high school senior named Greg Gaines. He's made it his life's mission to make sure that he makes no enemies, no one dislikes him, but at the same time, no one really likes him. So he's just kind of this guy that floats around between social groups in high school, but doesn't really have one to call his own. He does hang out with this one guy named Earl, who I thought was the highlight of this book. He was so no nonsense and a little scary and so funny. I really liked Earl's character. So Greg is pretty much a loner, and one day his mom comes into his bedroom and says, "Hey, remember that girl Rachel from Hebrew school?" And yes, Greg does remember her. This was a girl that he sort of inadvertently used to make another girl jealous, which didn't work at all, so he just stopped talking to Rachel after that, even though she did have the biggest crush on him. And she knows this, and they just have this mutual "I won't bother you if you don't bother me" going on. They haven't talked in years, and he was just a jerk about it. But he does remember Rachel, and his mom tells him, well, she's got leukemia, and she nags him into spending time with Rachel until she dies because he used to make her laugh all the time, and his mom thinks that it would be good for both of them to get out of the house and for him to cheer her up and him to actually make a friend for once. So that's really where the story takes off, and I liked this book, but I didn't love it as much as I thought that I did. Let me start out with the positives first. Jesse Andrews wrote this book as if Greg were both the narrator and the writer of this book, and he directly addressed the reader dozens of times throughout the book. I like that little meta aspect when it's done well, and it was done very well here. Greg had such a funny narrative voice. I was constantly in giggle fits and just like full body cringe attacks. It was such a fun read. And I like that Greg was very honest about who he was. He kept on pointing out when he would be mean or douchey, like in his head. He'd say, "Wow, why did I say that? That was so stupid." Or, "Wow, I am such a bad person." And a lot of times we, like, as a reader, we could have just said, "I understand where you're coming from, I'll let that slide," but he never let it slide. He was constantly berating himself. And that kind of honesty was really refreshing. By far the strongest aspect of the book for me was its formatting. The fact that Jesse Andrews wrote out a large portion of it like a movie script helped me fly through it, and it just made it so much more fun and engaging to read. I thought that was such a cool little touch, and the fact that Jesse Andrews put in the time and effort to make it consistently flow with the story, as opposed to making it annoying or detract from the story, that just took so much effort, and I really did appreciate that. This was such a cool cast of characters. We had Greg's wacky parents, his very eccentric history teacher, who I think everyone has had a history teacher like Mr. McCarthy. We had Earl, who was by far my favorite character, even though I initially did not like him at all. And then Rachel, who was this very quiet, calming character in this sea of very wacky people in this book. But that leads me into the negatives. I can't decide if it was a writing or a character flaw, but we got very little character development or insight into anyone other than Greg. Like Earl and Rachel, I was dying to get to know them, and we would get some semblance of character development from them every once in a while, and it would largely go unacknowledged, and Greg just wouldn't go any deeper. He wouldn't like delve into the whys or try and get to know his own friends, which was really frustrating because he's not that interesting of a character after a while. You kind of do get sick of him. You want to know about someone else. I also wasn't a huge fan of the humor in this book. I loved the narration and Greg's sarcastic side comments in his head, but his actual dialogue, where he was known as the funny guy in class, I didn't think any of his jokes were funny. They never made me laugh. At one point he went off on a 2-page jokey tangent about how his lunch looks so much like alien barf, and I was so annoyed the entire time. It was the most obnoxious kind of humor that I hate that so much. The plot itself started out really strongly, and I flew through the first half of this book. I like that it called out a lot of Hollywood cliches of what we probably expected to happen, and it made it abundantly clear from the get-go that this was not going to be a profound cancer romance novel about love and life and what we mean in this universe, like The Fault in Our Stars, which I did really like. But I like that this book had a very sobering and down to earth feel to it, and it made it a much more realistic experience that it just called to attention that our expectations were not going to meet up with reality. The plot seemed to veer off around the last third of the book, and it seemed like it wasn't quite sure what to do with itself anymore. Like it had an ending in mind, but it wasn't sure how to get there anymore. I liked this book. It was a lot of fun to read. I wish that it had cut back on the gross out humor and more thoroughly explored its characters, but I still recommend this to anyone looking for a quick light read. Thanks for watching. Bye!